Alright, so because the presentation unfortunately wasn't possible as I wanted to give it due to technical problems, I'm recording this video showing how I want to duplicate this orders history grid for the sample customer from the sample data using Hyvä admin grids. And that's why I'll switch right here to PHP Storm. Now the first thing that I want to do is I want to add a layout handle for this page in order to be able to initialize the Tailwind and Alpine.js onto this page. So here I'm on the customer edit page. At customer index edit is the full action name. So that's the layout that I'll create. Go. And I'll just need a single update statement for now. Update handle. Let's see, you know what, I'll just copy it from here. I don't do it that often. All right, there we go. Hyvä admin grid. That's all. And now it will load the information. It doesn't have any visual impact yet, right? Oh, by the way, I don't need to flush the cache because the cache watcher is running, but yeah, oops. Something went funky here when I resized the screen. Okay, cool, whatever. So now that much is done. The next part will be adding a new tab to the page for the other orders so we can compare them. And when I looked how this is done in the core currently, turns out it's actually built with UI components. So here is the layout file for the edit page, and it just in the content area just renders the customer form UI component, and for some reason, I don't know why, that isn't in the admin HTML area, it's in the base area. So I guess they intended it to be reused on the front end, but well, whatever. So that's basically building the content here, but I don't want to use UI components, right? That's my main reason why I want to build a replacement for the work that I do in the admin area. But I can hook into the existing system and you know, just add my own grid, server-side rendered grid there. So the order history is part of the sales module right here. It's also in base customer form. That's what it looks like. So by adding this kind of customer form UI component, HTML content component, we can then just render some server-side content into the page. All right, so let me add a little directory here, UI component. I'll put it in the admin HTML area. It's not relevant for the front end ever, what I'm doing here. So far so good. Okay, new file, customer form XML. I don't even have a file template for for UI components, so I'll just have to copy, paste, and adjust. So I'll get rid of this. Let me get rid of this. And now here I'll build the new tab. So this will be Hyvä order demo. Okay, I'll keep the same ACL, and the block will be needs to be a tab, right? So all these other tabs that Magento uses all extend from the tab wrapper and just override some properties, but we can use this tab wrapper class directly. So I'll just add this as the block class here in my form. Is this mine? Yes, this is mine. Okay, so I'll paste the class name in here. And the block name, well, just make that unique on the page like this. Okay, so of course this on its own won't really render anything. We need to give it a label, and instead of extending the class and setting it there, we can also just set it with some arguments. So the argument to give it a label is a tab label. a string. And I'll just call it Hyvä orders, actually. Let's use the umlaut there, right? So let's see if that already renders. Yeah, there it is. It should be empty, yeah, but it's there. I want to move that further to the top so it's easier to work with during development, that after I reload, I don't always have to scroll down and click. So I think I can add a sort order here. Sort order, XSI type is int, number. Let's give it a 0. So this puts it right at the bottom, all right? So let's give it a larger sort order. Still at the bottom. Interesting. Maybe it'll change when there's some content, we'll see. I'm a bit surprised it didn't move up immediately. Oh well, whatever. So first of all, I would like to add some content to this block. And now this will be the actual Hyvä block. So normally that's what I would put directly into the reference container content XML. Only here we're putting it into an HTML content node. So new block, name, something like this. Yeah, doesn't really matter, right? We need a class though, and it has to be the Hyvä grid block type. Block, there it is, the admin HTML block. Okay, and as an argument, it receives the name of the file containing this grid configuration. So the argument name is grid name, and the type is string, and let's call it customer orders. Okay, so now if I reload, I would expect an error message because this grid definition doesn't yet exist. Okay, very good. No customer orders source configuration. So let's create it. So the source configurations go into a subdirectory of the view area called Hyvä grid. Here are a couple of other test grids that I use during development. They're part of a sample module. So I have a file template for that, so I'll just add it like this. So the first thing I need is I need to give it a source. There are currently three different types of sources. I can give it a collection class, a repository list method, or a array provider, which is a class which just returns the grid data as an array. There's more documentation of this in the docs module, the subdirectory of Hyvä admin. So you can look it up there. For now, we'll use a collection because there's a table, sales order grid, that Magento uses to build this backend grid here. And there's a collection that uses this table. So I want to go back to the sales module and search for that table name to find the collection. Main table, sales order grid, oh, there it is, okay. Okay, yeah, this is the class, so I can copy a reference to this class, and all I do here is I specify this collection class as the source. So now with this configuration in place, we already get a grid. It's still at the bottom, okay, but here's the grid. Turns out there's too much information here, so we'll have to limit the amount of information, and that's pretty typical when working with core classes. When I'm using the grid system with custom classes, I usually have more or less just the columns that I want anyway, but these core classes never were intended to be used as raw grid source data, so it's normal we have to massage the data a little bit with them. So let's go ahead and limit the number of columns we want to use here, and I also want to try to see if I really can't resort this sort order here. So okay, let's give it something realistic. How about 50? And where does this put it? Ah, right here. What got 5. Oh, now it's at the top. Very good. So, I don't know, maybe 0 earlier just was treated as no sort order, so it still was sorted at the bottom. I don't know, whatever. Now I've got it where I want it. So let's go ahead and limit the number of columns. Let's see, which columns do we have in the grid we want to duplicate? So we have the order increment ID. Let me go straight ahead and add them in the grid configuration here. So the way I built this was to maximize the help I can get from the IDE. So for me, it's really important to have good IntelliSense in the IDE. So VS Code or PHP Storm both can use a catalog of XSD mappings, and then you'll get auto-completion too. So that's really helpful. There are two ways we can configure the columns. Either we can just say, okay, only use these, or we can say use all except. That would be this exclude. Or we can use a combination of both. In this case, I'll just use include and use it with these few columns here. So first column would be order ID. I think that probably will be called increment ID. Oh, that's my first column. Next column would be purchased. I guess that would be created at. The next column is a bill to name. All right. Oops, like this. And then we have the ship to name. What's next? Order total. And a purchase point, so that would probably be something like store ID. And by the way, we could also already add a label here if we wanted to, like this. But we'll have to revisit these individual columns, I guess, anyway. And then the action will take care of that a little later. So now if I reload, let's see what happens. Probably I didn't get the column names to match immediately. Yeah, so bill to name and ship to name and order total aren't really columns that exist or fields that exist on this collection. So let's see. Oh, okay, so it's shipping name and billing name. So I'll just change this. Billing name, and the label will be bill to name, and shipping name, label ship to name. All right. And the next one was order total. I guess that would be something like grand total. Oh, let's try. Let's see what this gives us. Okay. Oh, okay. That looks a lot better already. So we have the increment ID. That should be a different label. Order number created at. Okay. We'll have to see how that looks. Bill to name. Oh, look at this. We're not yet limiting the orders to only this customer. So probably would be a good idea to do that first of all. Different ways we could do this, but the simplest way is to create a default binding for this search criteria that is used to load this data to a query parameter ID. This ID parameter is the customer ID that's currently being viewed here. So that would be something we can specify on the source in the default search criteria bindings. I want to add a field here. The name is entity ID, I guess. Oh no, customer ID, of course. And the request param is ID. So now if I reload, it should only contain Veronica Costello orders. Yeah, all right. What next? Let's compare. So order number, purchase, bill to name, ship to name, order total, purchase point. Okay, and the action right here, purchase point and order total. And right, this purchase point is just showing the store ID. Here we can specify a type as an example, store ID. The type usually is determined automatically based on the return types of the classes, but since store ID in this case just returns a number, it just displays it as a number. If we want to change that, we can manually specify a type code, and there are a whole bunch that are supported out of the box, and it's also easy to add custom ones. Also, the grand total, I would like to show that as a price, so here I'll set the type to price too, like so. And if I reload, the whole thing is slowly beginning to look a bit better. The purchase point here is currently just rendered this website / and the store view. In the default view, it looked a bit differently. It rendered it nested. There's a way to do this, which is if we don't explicitly say that a column may render HTML, it will always just escape the output and try to get the output as pure text. If we specify render as unsecured HTML true, that means cell content may include HTML, and now it will look like this, much better. So we're already pretty close to what we started out to do. If I go here, okay, well, we can see that it sorted the orders by purchase date in ascending order. So we can do the same. That would be part of the navigation. Sorting, default sort by, and default sort by column, created at. So now when I reload, we should get the same sorting. Right, except we don't want to sort ascending, we want to sort descending, right? So the newest is at the top. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's a bit weird that here they say it's ascending when it actually isn't. But okay, we have the same effect now that the newest order is at the top. So I guess the last thing that I want to show is how to add the action column here to reorder. If I look at the link that it points to, it's the sales order view. And then the order ID is part of it. And yeah, I guess, you know, that's the link there. Oh no, here, different. Sales order create reorder. I was just surprised. Up there it said something about order view. But no, it's actually, I can see it down at the bottom of the browser here, right? When I hover over this, it's sales order create reorder. Okay, so let's add an action. That's part of the actions column here. Actions, action. The action ID will be reorder. That's just a unique ID. The label is reorder. And the URL is the typical Magento 3-part, route ID, action path, action. Syntax, so that will be sales order create, I think it was reorder, right? And the ID param was order ID. And finally, we can specify the ID column, which would be entity ID. That's the value that will be then passed to this URL using this ID param. All right, so quick reload. And we have a reorder column. And when I click it, let's see if it works. Yeah, there we go. So that's done too. Awesome. Okay, so that should give you an idea of how this creating grids work. It's really not a lot of code to do, and if you have auto-completion, it's easy and fun. There's much more that can be done. Again, if you have the module installed using Composer, or in my case, this is actually where I do the module development, so I've got it under app code. There's a lot of information in the doc directory, like different types and so on. It's all in there. It's probably easier to read on GitHub though. So, yep, that's pretty much what I wanted to show. In the presentation, I would have gone faster. The nice thing about being able to do a recording is I can do it in a more relaxed fashion. So thank you very much. Sorry again for the trouble. Looking forward to your pull requests, and have a great day at Meet-Magento.